BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, it's Anna Hill here with the Farming Today podcast, where we pick Tenderstem broccoli. We hear about new winter veg varieties, and we ask if the offer of mirror agreements will encourage farmers to stay in some long-term environmental schemes.
It's absolutely devastating for farm businesses whose income is being eroded very, very quickly.
We'll have more on that in just a moment, though first, all week we're looking at winter veg. MWW Farms in Worcestershire grows Tenderstem broccoli. It's high value and labour intensive. The farm planted 30 acres of Tenderstem 10 years ago. Now it's growing around 900 acres, and it relies on seasonal workers to harvest it, skilled pickers who come from overseas on 6 months visas to work. Rebecca Rooney met Alex Bayliss, the farm operations manager.
That's the snap of Tenderstem broccoli.
Yeah, so that means it's basically really fresh. You hear it's a nice crunchy sound when you bite into it. It's my favourite way of eating it raw.
And we're in a big field surrounded by Tenderstem, and scattered across the field are teams of pickers, because this is quite a labour-intensive crop.
Yeah, so we employ about 120 staff just for Tenderstem. We've dropped down to about 90 now. So they are working 6 days a week, and they'll stay here until the crop finishes, basically, which is the start of January.
My name's Simon Barnett, and I'm head of growing for MWW Farms. Tenderstem is quite a unique product. There's only 6 or 7 growers in the country that have licence to grow it, because it's a registered trademark, the same as Pink Lady.
And does that mean that it's expensive to grow?
The seed cost is much higher, and the growing costs would be more than conventional broccoli. The Tenderstem crop plant was bred by a Japanese company, therefore there's only a number of companies that are allowed to grow it under licence.
A skilled picker, as we've got here, is just going through the crop with a small knife and very quickly and efficiently picking about 3 or 4 stems per plant, pops them in a bag, pops it in a crate, and then here's the tractor that'll collect all the crates and take them to the pack house. Now, Alex, why is Tenderstem broccoli so labour intensive?
So Tenderstem is picked between 8 and 12 times per crop. So we'll come in here 10 weeks after transplanting and do the first harvest. And then we'll come in between 3 and 5 days later and pick it again. And we'll do that 8 to 12 times. The skill to harvesting it is knowing what to pick and what to leave. If they're taking stuff that's too small and out of spec, that's then lost. And they could have picked it and got it in spec in the next pick.
Hi. How are you?
I'm always...
Yeah, what's your name?
what's the name?
Yeah.
Kuralbek.
And
Kyrgyzstan.
is this your first year picking?
Picking?
Picking first year? Have you been here before?
Months.
6 months.
6 months, yes.
Yeah.
Visa.
And do you like it?
Very good. Very good. Serious.
You are very fast.
Ben de tartınız çöltü doğdurmadı.
And Korelbeck and his colleagues are just weighing the crates of broccoli to make sure that each one contains the same amount, and trying not to get the crates in the mud. Where would most of your staff be from?
We've sourced a lot of staff from Uzbekistan, Romania and Ukraine, but getting returnee staff back is key. We aim for a 90% return rate on staff year on year.
And it's piecework, so a skilled picker could earn how much in a day?
So in an 8-hour day, a skilled picker could earn £250, £300 a day. So they can earn a lot of money, but they have to work for it, and they know that. And skilled labour is worth the reward, and we're not afraid to pay people a good wage if they're good at their job, basically.
I mean, that is a very attractive rate of pay. You work hard, you get paid well. How come you're not able to attract staff locally to pick this Tenderstem?
UK people don't have it in them, quite simply. If you compare it to the staff we've got in here, they wouldn't have the work rate, they wouldn't have the get up and go attitude that some of these guys have got. We tried it in COVID, but yeah, we just got absolutely nowhere with them.
Alex Bayliss there. And next week we'll be looking at labour on farms and speaking to recruiters who employ seasonal workers on farms like that one in Worcestershire. Well, even though winter vegetables may seem a simple staple, developing new varieties takes a lot of time and money. Commercial seed and plant breeders invest millions every year in developing new traits, either to improve eating quality or to make the veg easier to grow. Dr Jamie Claxton is Director of Research and Development at Tozer Seeds. He told me why he thinks developing new winter veg is essential.
They're really important, actually, because innovation is really important in the whole veg industry to keep people interested, to add value to products as well. I mean, we have a relatively new product called Kalettes, which we've also trademarked, which is a cross between Brussels sprouts and curly kale. And trademark adds value to the product, protects your IP to some extent, because there's a big investment to actually develop a new variety of veg.
And are farmers keen to take up new veg, or do they prefer growing what they've always grown?
Well, I guess it's easier to grow something you've already grown because it's kind of you know how it behaves in the field. I mean, new veg can be a little bit challenging for us and for growers because they're a little bit unproven in terms of growing conditions can be a bit variable. But they do enjoy growing them. It's something different and it can give higher returns to the grower as well if it's a higher value product.
What about companies like yours? Where does the funding come from to develop new varieties? Who's pushing and who's pulling?
We have to continually respond to market demands in terms of new diseases developing, things like climate change, where we require more resilient, weather-tolerant veg. So I guess we're using money we get from the varieties we're currently selling to continually innovate, to remain competitive in the marketplace so that we are continually providing new veg which respond in terms of resilience and resistance to pests and diseases. Particularly with production of pesticides and things like that, we have to have varieties that have resilience and pest and disease resistance, which is a key breeding trait that we develop.
Now, you develop parsnip seeds as well. I've just been out to see a big parsnip producer and we'll hear from them tomorrow. But they have particular problems with seeds germinating but then not growing on. They say probably because of weather conditions. How difficult is the unpredictability of the weather now for seed breeders?
It's a huge issue, even in terms of actually our producing the seed in overseas. That can cause issues with it actually producing the seed in the first place. And then it's far more challenging for growers. Things like parsnip can undergo things like dormancy if they're going into very hot conditions when they're drilled. And also if they start to germinate and then are subject to very wet or hot conditions, that can cause plants to basically stop growing. So it's a real challenge. We're having to build in drought tolerance, water tolerance and cold and hot tolerance into our varieties.
What's on the horizon and how far away is the next big thing, do you think?
We're continually innovating new varieties. I think disease resistance and resilience to weather is the key in terms of getting that into traditional vegetables, as well as looking at new things as well. We're looking at things like new types of Kalette, where we've got like Cavolo Nero crosses, where we're producing mini baby Cavolo Nero coloured kales as well. So we're always looking at new flavours, new developments, and even things like vertical farming, where we're developing products for different growing technologies. So we're always looking at new technologies, new flavours and new colours, things like red Brussels sprouts as well. And also nutritional composition. We've got projects on things like parsnips. Parsnips are actually very high in things like folates. We've got a project with the University of Southampton looking at parsnips as a superfood. Nutritional side of things is really important as well.
Dr Jamie Claxton from Tozer Seeds. Many farmers have been worried about their Countryside Stewardship Higher Tier agreements, which expire or partly expire this year. These cover larger-scale agri-environment schemes and capital grants for the most environmentally important sites, according to DEFRA. Well, DEFRA has now announced that farmers can take up a mirror agreement to carry on from their old one. This will last the same time as their original arrangement, 5 or 10 years, and will exactly duplicate their existing plan, including the money they get for it. So is this the answer for those worried farmers? Dr Julia Aglionby is from the Foundation for Common Land.
Currently, farmers for the last few years have been living in this purgatory. They know basic payment scheme has been being phased out, and they've been waiting for new environmental land management schemes. We've had this announcement that the new mirror agreements have to be an exact duplicate of their existing agreement. It's absolutely devastating for farm businesses whose income is being eroded very, very quickly. And these areas in the uplands and on commons are very, very dependent on this income.
So there's nothing that they think they can transition to?
No, at the moment, if you have a higher tier countryside stewardship scheme, you cannot enter into the new sustainable farming incentive moorland offers that there are. All you can do is add in the moorland survey. But most of these commons have already done that. They're still being left with a very significant shortfall in income. And the other thing to remember is that a lot of these payments haven't kept pace with inflation. So in particular, there are over 6,000 higher level stewardship schemes still in existence. Those payments were set in 2005. Those agreements are now worth half of what they were worth. There has been no increase.
Does that mean then that if they then take up a mirror scheme, they'll get exactly the same money that they have been getting for the last 5 or 10 years with no increase?
Well, we have two parallel schemes. We have the higher tier countryside stewardship scheme, and those payment rates did go up a couple of years ago, and we have no idea whether they'll be increased again. With the higher level stewardship, we're extremely concerned.
Why do you think farmers aren't being offered new schemes or more money if they're going to take on a mirror scheme over the next 10 years?
Well, I'm both confused and bemused because in the last few weeks, ministers have told us that they are accelerating the phase out of dealing payments because they want to have more money available for these new environmental land management schemes. But here we're seeing the farmers getting the worst of all possible worlds. I think the transition isn't working as fast as it should be. It's very time consuming to move agreements across. So there just isn't the capacity, would be my feeling about this. And therefore, they're just extending this purgatory even longer.
But then again, DEFRA might say, well, at least we're giving the farmers something. They've got the ability to continue on with these agreements.
Well, it's not a just transition. We should be rewarding people fairly. And yet DEFRA are paying these reduced rates because they haven't matched inflation. And farmers are getting a poor deal. We know transition is difficult, but it seems that either the computer system or the level of advisors isn't enough. And I would be asking DEFRA to really consider how they can increase the numbers of advisors, whether they can use people not in the public sector, but with earned recognition from the private sector, non-governmental organisations.
Capital grants are also included in these countryside stewardship higher tier schemes. What's happening to them?
It's been raised recently by the Central Association of Agricultural Valuers that the Rural Payments Agency have halted offering capital grants. What seems to be the problem is that there's uncertainty around future budget, and there's been a lot of applications for capital grants. This is both for hedging, for creating buffer strips, to do more for nature, and also for peatland restoration. And yet these grants appear to be being paused.
Do you think that farmers will not take up these mirror agreements and decide, that's it, I'm just leaving these schemes?
I'm concerned that people will feel trapped in their existing agreement because it's too complex to move. So it's leaving farmers in a very, very awkward position.
Dr Julia Aglionby. DEFRA says on its blog concerning this that farmers will be contacted by the Rural Payments Agency and more details will be released next month. That's all from us. I'm Anna Hill. The producer is Rebecca Rooney. Farming Today is a BBC Audio Bristol production.